Hi, I'm Kai, and welcome back to FreeBuild for Planet Zoo this time. It's been a little while, I figured this version of the mod needs some love. But before we get into any of the new, shiny features, I realized I never covered the original version of the mod, so let's just cover that real quick. But before we get into any of that, be aware that the mod comes with 3 new shortcuts this time around. One for using FreeBuild in building modes, one for using it in the terrain editing mode, and one for toggling grids. And we might as well start with changes to the terrain editing mode. So this is pretty simple stuff. I've increased intensity up to 200% and size of editing up to 60. So we can just make bigger mountains quicker. That's sort of the main thing. Water cleanliness can also be set to 150% now. So it's just more variety in how clean your water looks, really. It's pretty small stuff, but it can help you customize a little bit better. And finally, you can also ignore terrain constraints by holding Y. So if we try to build over paths, normally it won't let you. If you hold Y while you build, you can just sort of build over them. I can't really think of a use for this, but I have been asked for this feature, so here it is. Next up, paths. Similar changes to those, they can go down to 1 meter in width now. They can be really, really small. And up to 15 units in length. So quite long if you want them to be. That's mostly there to get better curves. Now keep in mind, guests can't go on paths quite this small. I think they can go up to 2 meters. But if you enable railings, you can make some pretty cool planters with these. Now at the top of this path menu, you'll find this FreeBuild checkbox. Checking it doesn't actually do anything, it's more of a visual aid for whether or not FreeBuild is enabled. And remember, you enable it by pressing Y. So without FreeBuild enabled, for example, I can't build here. There's just no space for the path. If I press Y, you'll see FreeBuild is enabled, and I can now build a path here. So that can, for example, be really helpful when filling out empty spaces. Next up, similar changes to barriers. So, if you press Y, you can enable FreeBuild mode and build over obstacles. And what's more, barriers can now go up to 40 meters in length, so again you can get better angles out of them. Enable curved barriers. And finally, you can bring them down all the way down to 0.1 meters. That says 0.0 meters, it's 0.1 meters in reality. So you can make some really, really tiny barriers. These can be especially useful as, say, path curbs. Next up, tracks can also go through anything. So this is just the default option on. You can sort of build them through anything you want. And with that, we can finally get to the exciting new features. And for that, I would like to draw your attention to my abomination here. You see, alongside disabling collisions, the mod adds a no grids option to the game. So if I click on a grid item, normally if I move it, it moves on the grid. You can't disable that by default. But if you press comma, you'll see grid turns off, and I can now move it freely of the grid. The item does still snap to other grid items, but you can disable that too. I think that's like here-ish. And then surface, alignment, yeah, there you go. And then by simply pressing comma again, you can realign it to the grid and place it back where it belongs. Now what's really fun about this no grids option is I've also enabled, if you press X or just place it and edit it, you'll see you can advance move and advance duplicate things. If I were to say press X here or just click that button, whichever, I can rotate it in any direction I wish. If I then press Ctrl X, I can advance duplicate the item. And then I can press M to move it, and again, press comma to re-enable grid alignment. Now, as a fun little curiosity, you can actually use this to move items outside of the playable area. And it can go way, way out there. What's the limit? Let's see. Hey, that's about as far as it goes. And that's where it lives now. I can just reach the, God damn it. Oh, hold on. Does free camera help? It does a little bit. Yeah, there we go. And this also works for paths, so paths can go outside too. If I just enable FreeBuild. There we go. And the same is true for barriers. And finally, FreeBuild also works for path attachments like bins and benches. So normally you can only build them on paths or snap them to corners. If you press Y, you can build them anywhere. See, there you go. And like with the other grid options, you can place them somewhere, click on them, press X, and then just move them around wherever you please. And yes, this also works for facilities like this. You can place that anywhere. You can click on it. Yeah, what she said. You can disable grids, move it around without a grid, enable grids. You can enable FreeBuild, and sort of rotate it wherever you want. So putting all those features together, you can make something like this, with paths going underwater, tracks going underwater, paths going over fences if you want to do that kind of thing. Again, as the name implies, with FreeBuild there are no limits. And with that, if you excuse my incredibly messy park, that about does it for the new version of FreeBuild, so that'll be out pretty soon. I'm just testing a couple of performance features, so expect it to be out in the next couple of days.